Hey guys, I'm Danny Rants. Welcome to episode 1. I'm here on King Street, Melbourne's most notorious and probably seediest street. Famous for strip clubs, nightclubs, brothels, druggies and bikies. King Street has no doubt earned its place as the number 1, probably seediest place in Australia. I'm going to do the lower part. I'm about to walk you through the place that I worked for 2 decades and tell you some stories about my experiences on King Street, plus also some famous stories of different locations and places that have happened over the last 2 decades that I've been working in clubs. So this reminds me of when I actually was doing clubs. I would leave my house, not normally when it was daytime, but I would head out and then I would drive or someone would drive at about like 9:30, depending if we're going to get there before the door girls did, and head into King Street. So come with me as I head to the notorious King Street, one of the most notorious club streets in Melbourne, maybe even Australia. Alright, we're coming up to King Street now. So I would commute in every sort of Friday, Saturday. Took me about half an hour to get into the city. As I said before, if I wasn't driving, someone else was. I'd come through the tunnel and then I'd pull off through, can't remember the name of the road, off Power Street. And I'd turn right when I got to the intersection, go over the little bridge. I'd see that beautiful sky on the right hand side and then I would enter King Street. The notorious fucking King Street. And I never knew what was going to happen, ever. And that's the reason why I probably loved it, I guess, so much. Sweet, so I've just parked up on King Street. Even as I'm doing this and I'm filming, I'm thinking, what the fuck am I doing? But you know what? If you're not going to give it all, it's probably not worth giving it at all. I know all my clubmates are going to be watching this thinking, has this dude lost his mind? But yeah, I lost it years ago. So I guess it's time to take you guys on a walk on the old notorious King Street. So let's go. Straight away the coppers. So you can't start a tour of King Street without this place here. So this was referred to as Tram Car Park or PhD Car Park back in the day. And it was probably the most famous car park in Melbourne when it came to people consuming drugs. I reckon people consumed as many drugs here as they did in the clubs around King Street. You couldn't do a tour of King Street without giving this place an honorary welcome. Some people would literally spend more time in that car park, or that one right there, than they would in the actual clubs. I've heard of people that would come in and just spend the whole night there. So not on King Street yet. This is at the bottom of King Street. So this is the lower part of King Street. I guess this is probably the more notorious part, depending on what kind of, I guess, area you were around or what you were doing. So this alleyway is where I used to park all the time. So I used to come in here and it was like an empty building site at the end of it. Everyone used to park along this part here. You'll see in a second. Just here. And it was illegal to park there, but no one ever fucking stopped you. So anyway, this alleyway is also has a little bit of club history. Just up here, which we'll go see soon, is a place called PhD that turned into Cloud 9. And years ago, people were parked in here, much the same as I was saying with the car park, and they would do drugs here. And a girl was here for a recovery club. So a recovery club is a club that sort of starts at 5 a.m. And basically what she did was she was sitting in the car and she thought that a bottle of water there was a bottle of what looked like water but had GHB in it. And she grabbed that and she sculled it. For anyone who doesn't know much about GHB, if you have like one slight mil over, you can die. This chick had a fucking full swig of a bottle, so she actually ended up dying in this alleyway here. And that was a long time ago, but yeah, pretty fucked up. So up here, we're about to come into the corner of King Street. So one night, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, I was walking back and right here was a motorbike. And it was like a Harley Davidson. And I shit you not, there was like a full sandwich bag full of white powder sitting on the Harley Davidson seat. And I'm like looking at it, and my car was just parked over in that alleyway over there, and I'm like, should I take this? And then I was like looking at it, it was like, so in broadside, it was just sitting there, and I'm like, this has got to be a stitch up, there's got to be a setup. So I was like looking around everywhere, fucking checking around, and I'm like, either thought like a biker was going to come out and attack me, or second to that, Ashton Kutcher was going to pop out and be like, you've been punked, and I was going to get arrested by a bunch of police. That neither happened. So here we are, this is King Street, the notorious King Street, the lower part of it. It's not too sexy. So while we wait to cross the road and we sort of talk about the history over the other side, which is the most important part, I'll start off with a story that was probably one of the most craziest that I ever saw. I was standing over a tramp one time, which is just over there, and the club next to it is called Spearmint Rhino, and that's like a super famous club. Anyway, I was sitting there with my missus and we were at the 7-Eleven when all of a sudden up here I saw a whole bunch of, I won't say what, but like a biker gang walking down and walking through here. And I was like, what the fuck? So we crossed the road and we were literally standing there. And then they came down and they went into Spearmint Rhino and they basically punched their way through the guards and then walked upstairs, and people were like running and screaming out as they were coming down. And all these police came and they blocked off the whole road. So they blocked off all here, all the way through down to here. And there was like horse and cars. There was like helicopters. There was like a big SWAT van. There was heaps of stuff here. And they just sort of stood out front. I reckon there was like 30 or 40 cops there. They didn't really do a whole lot. And then the fucking bikies basically just left and walked straight up there. So it was all good from there, but it was a pretty crazy story. Hey man, how are you? So the police came out and one of the heads spoke to him. He was like talking to him. And he was sort of saying like, hey, look, you can't be here. You got to move on. And I was like, what the fuck? Because if this was anybody else who'd done this exact same thing, they would have 100% got handcuffed. But they stayed and they talked for like half an hour. And then eventually they just let them boot. So they walked off. And then the week after, I came back here and an opposing gang, because this was during like a security war. So two rival groups were fighting over basically the strip clubs. So back then, it would be very, very common that a security mob would have all the strip clubs. So at this point, there was some sort of war going on about the strip clubs. And that's what they were fighting over. That's what I was told anyway. But the week after when I came, the opposing gang, they literally blocked off this whole street. And they were like basically being traffic controllers. And I pulled up coming through King Street, and there was a group of them sitting there fully patched, like stopping me like that, and then like pushing me through like this. And the police were watching them do it, and they didn't do anything. And that was fucking wild to me, because I was like, what? They can just do whatever they want. And very, very rare do you see them all patched up. But that was a rarity that I saw both gangs 2 weekends in a row patched up. But as I said, it was to do with a security thing and a show of force. And they were trying to make an impression on one another, and then I'm assuming that one group won the contract for the strip clubs, because I didn't see him again after that. Here's a club called Click. You can see the windows all smashed. We used to call this joint the fish that John West Reject get in, basically because it was the only place that people would go if they couldn't get into anywhere else. And it was a bit of a fucking freak show, to be honest. They used to stay open until real late in the morning, like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. It was just full of like creatures, really. So over here, this pole right here, I spent a good part of 5 years hanging around. So this club right behind my left shoulder is a club called Tramp. This was the notorious night spot, and it was famous for its recovery on Saturday nights. I ran the Friday for 5 years, and the Friday was called Fake Tits. It was an institution, the club was, but so was my night. We used to have the likes of like What's So Not, Peking Dark. We had heaps of massive artists that played there before they blew up. And then a lot of Melbourne careers were backed off the back of this joint. Playing the recovery. I used to run an event here that used to start at 6 a.m. and run till 6 p.m. And I remember I used to come here, I would take over like the half day shift, so I'd get it at like midday, and you can imagine how chopped everybody was. So I would legitimately just sit out here, counting down the hours, waiting for it to finish, because it was so gross in there. And this is another little thing that no one would know, but behind me is Tramp. So when you open these doors up, you go down the stairs, but if you go up the stairs on the right hand side, up here, there's actually another nightclub up there. And it used to be called Barcode, and that was another 24-hour license joint that was open all the time, but it got shut down because there was a guy there called Christopher Hudson, and he basically was partying there one night, had a fight with his girlfriend, came down, and he shot a couple of people in the city, and unfortunately someone died. There was a big manhunt for the guy, but they eventually found him, and then they shut Barcode down. So for as long as I've worked at Tramp, that joint up there was completely untouched. It was a full club, had a bar in it, the whole lot. No one really saw it. Tramp used the tours for a little bit, but there was a full club in there that no one used, and no one ever took over, or no one ever occupied. So it's no doubt it's still up there. This was the club I was talking about that got attacked by their biking club, and it's called Spearmint Rhino. And the other one is occupied by guards at the moment, so I'm trying not to take the piss, but you can see over there it's called Centerfold, but that was used to be called Spy Lounge. So, and that was a nightclub before it turned into a strip club. Before I worked at Tramp for 5 years, I actually was banned from here. And the reason why I was banned from here, funnily enough, was that I got in a massive fight. So I was like 19, maybe 20. And one of my mates had kissed the bartender at the club, and I took it upon myself, because he got him kicked out and it was his birthday, to have a few quiet words with the bartender, which ended up in me headbutting him. And sure enough, all the security guards sort of came down pretty hastily, and they grabbed me and they wanted to take my head off. So I actually used the bartender as a human shield, and I got my way up untouched, unscathed, all the way up the steps. And then I piss bowled it from here all the way over there, and back there used to be like a car park, and I hid behind one of the poles and got away from the guards. But my mates were not that lucky, so they weren't involved in it, and a couple of them got bashed. Sorry boys, but I guess it makes up for a good story. So this street here, when I used to work, it used to be packed. So it was like a sea of people, and it would just be absolutely full of people. Queen's Kebabs here, there'd be people everywhere, all over the place, and they used to pump like super loud music. I reckon there'd be tens of thousands of people walking up and down this street at any given time, back when we were running stuff here on a Saturday night. This is a Monday night, but even now it's still pretty busy. So this joint here on the corner, 42 King Street, this actually was the home of TFU for a while. We didn't run it at this point, but we used to come here, and I actually hated it. It was just this really awkward fucking club at the time. Now it's a state joint, and it was probably the lowest part of TFU in my opinion. We did a couple of dirty days here with Jason Colbeck and the other guys that ran it, but I never liked it. So I've talked about this before on one of my YouTube videos, but there was a police operation called Operation Cumulus that was effectively built to target drugs on King Street, but mostly to target Cloud 9, which was a venue that was just up here, and we're going to walk up there in a second. They used to have a marquee that was set up smack bang in the middle of the road. So just here there was a giant marquee, and they'd be walking up and down with dogs and stuff, and they would just stop people, and they would just get them up with the hands up against the walls, and they would literally just pat them down. And there used to be news cameras everywhere, and it was like a bit of a fucking show, to be honest. And then they would catch people, obviously, because people come to King Street and they would consume drugs, but they were basically out to get numbers on a tally board and take some fucking scalps and look good in front of the media. But once it sort of calmed down and the media lost interest, so did they, and Operation Cumulus fucked off, and we never saw them again. They actually had the one time where they took the dogs through the actual venue at Cloud 9 and through the smokers and shit, and people really cracked up about that because they were like, there shouldn't be fucking dogs in a nightclub when it's noisy and loud. So just up here is where Cloud 9 was. So Cloud 9 was one of the most successful Saturday nights probably in Melbourne's history. And before that was PhD. So Inflation it's called, is the actual club name. There's a downstairs, and then there's 1, 2, and then there's a rooftop up here. There's 4 rooms, 4 levels. PhD was here for a long, long time, which was a pure hard dance, which was like a hard style techno night. And then you obviously had Cloud 9, which I think was here for like about 11 years. Club's owned by a chick called Martha, who's an absolute girl boss. So they used to use the front door, and then they also used the side door over here. Sometimes they'd run dual events, but both of them were sort of used, but they both led to the same venue. So here they got Top Yard, Loft, whatever. It wasn't called that, it was Cloud 9. And when they used to use the full venue, they would use both doors just to get people through. One was in, one was out. But as time went on, they lost popularity. They started to have different nights in both. So I did a lot of events up there myself at an event called Top Yard. I had an event called Day and Night, which was like an R&B one. We used to use the back alleyway, and we would do like 300-400 people, and you could see like it was like on the skyline, you could see over the city. It was pretty fucking mad, to be honest. I used to love that event. It was good fun. We used to do like old school house and R&B. So I spent a lot of time on King Street. I wouldn't say it holds a special part of my heart, but it was just somewhere I fucking stood for a long time and watched the circus roll by. But basically, this is the lower part of King Street, which was had its days like anywhere. It was notorious, much the same as the top part of King Street. This, at one part, was probably busier, but it was more so known for its recoveries. So this part of the King Street wouldn't really kick off till sort of like 3-4 o'clock in the morning. So when all the clubs on King Street or Russell Street or Burke Street would close, people would come down here at 4 o'clock and they would stay here till like midday. So during the day, if you came here on a Sunday, there'd be absolute gremlins just fucking rolling around these streets off their absolute guts, while families were also walking their kids to the aquarium. So it was quite the show. But we'd see all kinds of crazy shit. There's like an alleyway over here, I might as well show you guys. It was like tramp smokers. People used to hang around through here too. So what they used to do was when the daylight hit, they'd sort of try to hide the sesh gremlins around the corner. So they weren't getting exposed to the families, but they couldn't contain them. They were rolling around everywhere. There was a really bad G epidemic at one point in King Street. It lasted for about 2 years. And this sort of part was the epicenter of that. You would literally see people blowing out all over the place, and they would hide around the corners, hide down these alleyways like over here. They would fucking be wherever they do, because they knew that if they got caught, they'd get kicked out. So their friends, great friends, would literally drag them around corners and hide them behind bins, let them sort of blow out. So when you were here, you just hop signs and the ambulances flat out, and they would just be picking people up like dominoes and just delivering them to the hospital and then coming back again to do the same thing. So they were pretty shit times, to be honest. Obviously there was fights and shit too, but like I would say the G epidemic was probably the grossest time I ever saw. One of the most fucked up things that used to happen was people would, like, just before they blow out, they get real horny. And I don't reckon people would know this, but they would like sneak off or run away and masturbate. So that was males and females would do that. And it wasn't unusual that people would get booted from being in a club, and they would be like hiding in the fucking toilets, having a crack at themselves. And we'd have to let them go because we knew they were about to blow out. So we'd either try to get them outside or we'd call an ambulance. But that was like a telltale sign that someone was about to fucking have a fit if we caught them masturbating. So no doubt these alleyways had people doing the same thing, which might be a bit funny, but at the same time it's pretty fucking rank. So this is Tramp alleyway down here. There's actually a little club over here which was sick, but it's probably gone now. That used to be just over here. So if you came at like say 9 o'clock in the morning and you wanted to continue to go clubbing, or even 10 o'clock in the morning, you had to walk down this alleyway. And when you walk down this alleyway, you would be greeted by a couple of security guards in plain daylight, and a smokers area. All these people would be smoking darts and shit. So that's where you would come, just around this corner, just here. So over here, you can still see like the remnants of it, and we'll go have a look at it. That would be like, you'd walk down this alleyway, the guards would be just near the bin. You'd walk in, and there'd be people smoking darts everywhere over here. Basically, the back door was just here. That was the door you walked in and out of, and that's how you got down to the club. So you walked downstairs, and then they sort of had like a marquee, and people would just punch durries here until the early hours of the morning. I would say at Tramp's peak, it used to close. This club here and this area here would close at like 6 to 7 p.m. most Sundays. One time we put an inflatable pool here, and it's pretty disgusting now when you think back on it, but everyone was swimming in it, like wearing bikinis and shit, and it was like summer, and we're in the middle of the CBD and people were swimming in it smoking darts. Are going to be plenty of people with plenty of disgusting memories of this alleyway and smoking darts in it, including myself, unfortunately. So King Street was always notorious, has been before Tramp, before Cloud, before anything else. This spot's always been well known for recoveries, for drugs, for all that sort of stuff. Some of the most famous clubs have been here. Some of the biggest careers ever have blown up here when it comes to DJ and dance music. And so without this street, a lot of people probably would have had a lot more brain cells, but at the same time, a lot of people wouldn't be where they are today internationally. So when my night was at its peak, it was massive. We would legitimately have people lining up all the way here. So right here, we're on the corner of Flinders Street and King Street. And at its peak, we'd have like 800 people inside. And we would legitimately have lines that would start around this corner, and they would go all the way from here, all the way to that black sign over there. So they'd be like 100 to 200, 300 meters long, and it was strict as fuck. People couldn't get in. The doorman wouldn't even give reasons. They'd just be like, no, no, no. I used to get people offer me like 50 to 100 bucks flat out to come in. And I literally used to get people beg me to come for like their birthdays and shit because it was so hard to get in at the time. I would say it was the most exclusive club in Melbourne during that time period of sort of 2010 to 2015. And even if you came at 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, you still weren't getting in. It was like they were very, very selective. And Steve and Matt that owned the joint, that's how they kept it so, I guess, exclusive, was that you didn't know why you weren't going to get in. So you'd roll up with your friends, you'd have your best clothes on, your best shoes on, you'd be with girls, and they just decide, not tonight, fellas. And I think that's what made people come back week in, week out. It was fucking notorious, and no doubt it played a massive, massive part in Melbourne's nightlife. It's actually cleaned up a little bit now, but King Street was sort of notorious for homeless people and sort of, I guess, drug users. Even during the week, that shit would happen, as you can see probably over there at the moment. It's always sort of had its own fucking dramas since, I guess, it started. I don't know how long it's been, the club posting for it, to be honest. But as long as I can remember, it was pumping. I don't know a whole heap, but basically King Street sort of started being a nightclub district in 1980. It was one of Melbourne's first nightclub districts, like in the CBD anyway. It's been notorious as sort of like a strip club haunt. The majority of Melbourne strip clubs are on King Street. So you've got like Spearmint Rhino, Centerfold, Men's Gallery, Goldfingers, Bar 20, and a bunch of other ones too. Dallas is another one. So it's been, I guess it's sort of like the most seedy street in Melbourne. It's famous for brothels, drugs, and strippers, basically. Very, very rarely does this street on a Monday not make the pavement, be it a shooting, a stabbing, a car crash, a drug overdose. If there's been controversy in the nightclub world, this street is where it's at. Bit going on behind me, unfortunately. I think there's someone actually having a drug overdose as we walk through, which is a bit sad, but I guess in saying that, that's how King Street has always been, always will be. Oh, unless, of course, they get rid of all the strip clubs, the fucking brothels and the nightclubs. But let's hope they don't, because it's also one of the funnest parts of Melbourne, right?